Yeah, and thanks again for everybody that's joining. So just to run through what this workshop is actually going to include, we're going to just do a bit of an introduction to myself and what Banjo Communication is and what we do. What is PR? PR is so complex that I don't think anybody really understands what it is. I'll be honest, even when I started PR and lots of people join the industry, it takes years to master and understand. So hopefully you'll get a bit of a sense about what PR professionals do. A brief overview of the UK media landscape. Again, all these sections I could actually do a separate workshop on. However, obviously for the sake of time, I'm just going to give it a flavour and lay the foundation for everybody to sort of give them a taste and a flavour to just make them understand a bit more about how we approach PR. Obviously, how to go to market. I've actually got an example client that some of you will know this brand. And then obviously at the end, Q&As. And I am just going to give an example about how you could potentially do your own PR. So that's what we're about to run through. So just a bit of an introduction to myself and Banjo Communications. We unearth stories of ambitious brands shaping the future. So here's just a flavour of some of the brands that I have personally launched and scaled to market. Just to let you know, I work across and the team works across consumer and business, so B2B, B2C, and it can be any major sector. So it could be food delivery and logistics, it could be marketplaces, it could be shopping, e-commerce, dating websites, but really the crux of it is we work with companies that are innovators. A lot of them are challenger brands, so they might be transforming their sectors with new technologies or new ways of working, and very much visionaries. I myself have been in PR for 18 years, and also I do all sorts of like influencer marketing and anything that kind of would fall under sort of PR and marketing and comms banner. But a lot of the companies we work with are fast growth startups. They're entering the market, they're rapidly growing. It might be in the UK, it may be internationally. And actually we also work with companies right through to IPO and beyond. And for companies that are established, they might be looking to reposition their brand, because some companies, for example, their audiences might have grown with them. They might be now in their 50s and they've got to target a younger audience. But essentially it's brands that are helping people live, work and play for the better. I'm not going to go through all the capabilities because it'd be super boring, and I'm going to talk all this through in the deck just about PR in general, but obviously most PR agencies do offer lots of capabilities. Also, a lot of startups and companies that are going to market it's ideally like to have an agency that has a global reach, and we do work with partners and consultants all over the world. I actually used to work in Australia, worked there for 4 years, and also I work with a lot of Silicon Valley startups, but we've got consultants and networks all over the world, which is really useful for clients. Right, that's a bit about Banjo. So we're going to lean in now to this go-to-market PR workshop. So first of all, what is PR? PR stands for public relations, and the basic core of it is that our jobs are to manage either a person, brand, company, or an organization. And essentially it's about how are they perceived by the general public. And obviously we want it to be really positive and them to have a good reputation. So we're building and maintaining a positive reputation. And that's through earned media versus paid. And I'm just going to talk you through the difference between advertising. So advertising is when you essentially pay to put your message in front of people, and you're in control of the words, the images, the timing, but essentially the audiences that are seeing it will know that it's advertising and it's been paid for. A PR person and a PR team, it's about earning attention. So it's when journalists, media, or influencers tell your story through, it's basically a third-party endorsement, because it's genuinely either news or worthy or relevant of what's happening in the current news agenda. And these influential journalists or TV producers actually organically want to weave you in and they think you're relevant. So it builds that trust. So people tend to trust more PR than they would advertisements. So that's top line. About 60 to 80% of what you read in media is driven. I know I spoke to David yesterday and he said, put that in. So it's really important to understand the importance of PR. So anything you're reading in newspapers or online or watching on the news, they are very much dealing with PR people where we are pitching and selling in these stories and updating them. Because essentially journalists and producers, they are super busy. They don't have a lot of time. So we ultimately package up stories that involve our clients to give them something newsworthy that their audiences will like. And even if a journalist is covering something that they haven't taken from our PR person, it's the story that they want to write about individually that they've researched, inevitably they will go to the PR or press team. It's very unusual that a journalist will just deal with a team that isn't like PR trained. This is a really wordy slide, so sorry about that. So this is just really top line. What are our PR toolkits? So what that means is what are the tactics we use to get coverage? This is more what we'd call media relations. So this is the day-to-day what PR people do to essentially tactically try and pitch our clients to media. So there's press releases and news announcements, which could be a new product, it could be a funding round or a new appointment, which means, you know, if you've just appointed a new CMO and you want to show to media that your company is growing, you're investing, you're expanding. Pitches are mostly what we do. We just pitch to media via email, and that could be tapping into seasonality. So for example, around Christmas, we worked with a food delivery brand and we did a very last minute pitch launching a £6 Christmas lunch that can be delivered in 1 hour. And that was a simple pitch. We put what food ingredients, and actually that got some really good coverage. Case studies. So this is real first person stories. Media cannot get enough of real first person stories. So for example, let's just say it's somebody that made £50,000 in a year working an extra 5 hours a week as a side hustle. And that might have been to save for a deposit for a house. I mean, case studies are very broad. It could be anything, but it's essentially where we've got not only a story and an angle, but we've also got actually proof of somebody that's backing that brand or story that they've benefited from. We also pitch content and content, so tips and advice. That's really good for SEO. So for example, we might work with an expert or someone from your team. For example, one I've put here is 5 tips to get your CV past AI resume filters, which is something we recently placed. But it's just, again, that's more with consumer, but it's where you can become an authority with a spokesperson from your company that's giving advice. That would potentially be more consumer, that particular angle. Product drops, if you've got something new. It might be, for example, let's say iPhone drop a new product. It might be an e-reader. It might be a food product, but something that would actually be reviewed and tried and tested. We'll send that out to media. Thought leadership and op-eds and CEO profiling we also do, which is kind of becoming more and more important nowadays because that helps with funding round by showing the success of the CEO, what they're talking about. So for example, a thought leadership might be why AI will lead to a 3-day working week, for example. It depends on the sector, but that's just something for you. Also media tours. Sometimes we take C-suite or the CEO around to media to announce news just as a tactic. So I just wanted to talk about the difference between a campaign. So I've just used one here, and this was actually a headline, which is Audi brings London Girls Easter Vision to life. Now, a campaign is an opportunity where often it can be more of an integrated approach. So it might be that a brand will get their PR team, their social media team, their advertising team, all into one room and say, we want to create a moment either to build brand awareness, maybe to change consumer behavior, or to get them adopting a new way of buying, consuming, or shift in perception. And essentially, as PR people, we're always looking at, well, how can we get as many touch points with media as possible? So a campaign is a good way to do that. So essentially, this campaign was by Aldi, and they set up a competition where children could put forward an Easter egg that would, like, the design of it and what the flavors would be, etc. And Aldi would choose a winner and actually roll that Easter egg out into stores and on shops, on shelves. So the touch points from a campaign perspective is that you would go out to national media to say that you've, announced this competition and that children can enter. You can go to regional media. So again, we're getting more scope to go out to media. Then there could be another touch point where you could get the runners up and say, well, fine, we've got 5 runner ups, and go to their local media. So you've got another opportunity to go out to media. And then finally, you announce the winner, you reveal the egg, and that's another moment. So you can see that over Easter, the big message here from Aldi is, we're Aldi, think about Easter and thinking about Easter eggs, and we're about children and family. And that's really what you're going out to with media. And when you do something like a competition, and this is just one creative, it's a very simple idea actually, but it's also giving journalists something where readers can linger for longer. And the reason I say that is because obviously as a product, we would just send that out to shopping pages, we call it. So, when you have a page and there's a wish list and it will say top 10 Easter eggs to buy this year. So that's your shopping editors, and that's one tactic. But by doing a competition, you're having a lot more opportunity. So I'm going on a bit, but that gives you an idea a bit more about the difference between a campaign. I just wanted to give you a stunt example. This is one of my favorite stunts, and it's from so long ago. When the Millennium Wheel, which is now the London Eye, called the London Eye, British Airways was sponsoring the Millennium Wheel that had to be up and ready for the year 2000. And essentially it hit media that they couldn't get up the Millennium Wheel. So Virgin Airways did a brilliant stunt on a blimp, I think it's called a blimp, which you can see there, that said BA can't get it up. And that was turned around, I think in days, where it's basically like a news jack. And they turned it around, they put budget towards it, and it got mass coverage, very clever stunt. Just to let you understand a news jack, it's when PR people, we're always reading media every day. And if we see something that we could jump on, so the Virgin team would have seen that the Millennium Wheel can't go up, it's sponsored by British Airways, and they've newsjacked it by said, let's do something to counteract and ride the wave of that media coverage. So that's kind of what a newsjack is. This is another newsjack example, actually. So the one before was kind of a newsjack and a stunt, but this is a newsjack example. Nigel Farage, I think it was last year, had a milkshake chucked at him, and it hit all the news. So one of our clients, we decided to work with a Nigel Farage lookalike and say that because he looks like Nigel Farage, that he needs security guards with him when he goes around, because otherwise he's getting milkshakes chucked at him and, abuse. And then we were able to ride off the back of what happened with Nigel Farage for our client. And then we got exposure off the back of that, which included our client, and it was very fun and witty. Crisis management is a completely separate thing. And again, a lot of what I'm talking through, I could literally do separate workshops on, but I just wanted to give you a flavor about crisis management, etc. Most companies at some point will have something that could damage their reputation. For example, it might be they're taken to court. It might be that somebody, they've got a problem with a staff member. That might be going to media. It might be, I've had instances where it's to do with somebody's died on a site, for example. And what we do is, when that happens, is that we will take a brief to find out what the circumstances and take all the information. Sometimes that will often include us speaking to their internal legal team. And we will, the first thing is you do a sort of crisis plan, but the very top line thing we would do is do a holding statement. So we would write a quote that we would get approved, and that would either be from a spokesperson within the company that we name, so a named spokesperson, but sometimes if it's very, very sensitive, we won't even put a name of that spokesperson. It would just be the brand spokesperson, that's it. So I'm going to give you an example. So this one is, we are aware of the incident that took place today at a certain location. We're investigating as a matter of urgency and working closely with the authorities or partners to understand what happened. The safety and well-being of our community is our top priority. We will share more details as soon as possible. So we usually do always hold a holding statement, and we will decide whether to proactively go out with that. So if it hits the media, we'll be like, we are going to send it out to media. So if they write that story, we are showing as a company that we are commenting, we're taking it seriously, we're looking into it, we're giving updates. Or it might be that we don't send anything and we just do it reactively. So if a journalist comes to us, then we agree internally, do we share the quote? So very complex crisis management, but I just wanted to touch on that. Finally, before we move on to the next section, I think you probably get the gist of this, but we influence influencers essentially, and those are journalists and editors within print, online, media. It can be producers at TV and radio producers that host guests and they're airing content and videos. Influencers and creators, they might be YouTubers, TikTokers, bloggers, podcasters, etc. We're also influencing investors and venture capital, VCs, customers and communities, internal stakeholders. So it might be we have to manage employees, founders, executives at big companies, and also policy and regulators. So for tech, healthcare, and finance, there are government bodies and groups that do lobbying. So it might be critical audiences we are trying to influence. So that's a quick run through of PR. I'm now going to move on to UK media. And again, I could do a complete workshop on this. So this is very top line, but I think it just builds the foundation before the go-to-market. So first of all, the UK in particular has a lot of national newspapers. There are a lot of countries where actually Australia, I'll give you an example. They only have 2 national newspapers. The rest are regional and syndicated. So we have a lot. I think we've got over 8. To the left, we've got our tabloid media, which we also call in PR, we often call it red tops. And on the right, we've got the broadsheets. So they've got a very different style of working. And for example, we know that the type of headlines that the tabloids want are going to be very different to the broadsheets. Usually the tabloids, which are more to the left, are easy reads. There might be stats and statistics, real life case studies, very sensational headlines. Whereas the broadsheets are going to be a little bit more maybe business. They might be more interested in more sort of intellectual, we kind of call it highbrow stories. And also we're looking at demographics here. So we know that the broadsheets on the right-hand side are going to be more your ABC1 audience. And what that means is potentially more affluent. They might be more professionals and more of a certain educational level. It doesn't mean that people reading tabloids aren't well off and haven't been educated as much. It's just generally skewed. We know that there's a bit of a difference there. So again, as PR people, we know that we're always changing our tones depending on the sort of newspaper. It's also worth mentioning, sorry, I've just gone back. When you go out to national media, to get internationals, you have to show that you are available national. So you might have launched just in London, for example, but you have, or Manchester, but you have ambitions over the next 6 months to roll out in new cities or regions. But we often say to clients, if you're just in one place in the UK, it's going to be hard for you to get a national. And just to let you know that from a funding perspective, usually, unless your business is super unusual and unique, which hopefully they all are, usually media would want minimum 3 million in funding to write about a business. However, there are nuances because we work with many companies and we find a way around that. But just to give you an idea that that's the playing field we're playing, it's very competitive, the UK market. I'm just going to go over this top line, but a lot of the newspapers and media groups are owned by media publishing groups. So the Murdoch Group own News UK, which includes The Sun, The Times, Talk TV, and it's mainly quite centre right-winged if you're looking politically, or right-winged, because we don't necessarily always tap into that, but it's really good when thinking about media that they do also take a political stance. Reach Media own all the Mirrors, the People, the Express, the Star, OK Magazine, and that's a bit of mix between right-wing and Labour. Then we've got MG Media, and they own Daily Mail, Mail Online, Metro, etc. Again, there's a few other publishing houses, but it's just to be good to be thinking that we do have publishing houses that own a few media, because especially if we're pitching, sometimes that can help where they can get syndicated. So other media within their media house will potentially run that story as well. But also, if we ever did do a media tour and take a CEO or a spokesperson around to media, it's good to know who's within that building together. Regionals are very important within the UK. Obviously, every kind of city or region will have their own newspaper. So London, we've got the Standard, there's the Yorkshire Post, there's the Manchester Evening News. We see these as tier one because they are very influential. Birmingham Live is the biggest. The Scotsman for Scotland is actually really a national for Scottish, for Scotland as a country, and the Daily Post for Wales, but we kind of see that as regional. But then again, there's just nuances within them. Just to let you know, to go out to regional media, you need to have a hyper-local story. So it's rare that they will cover a national story unless it's something that is huge, like something, I mean, I don't know, I was about to say a crisis has happened, but you know, there's certain times that they will mention it, but usually you'd have to have local stats, local case studies, how you're investing into that local market. Otherwise, they are not going to include you. And it's worth also saying that for some of these regionals that are a little bit smaller, these are some of the bigger ones, they do often sometimes ask for payment. So even though as PR people, we generally, brands pay our fees, our time, but we don't pay journalists to write stories. That's the difference between advertising as well. Advertising, you pay to have a slot, but there is a little bit more and more since COVID where we sometimes do need a bit of budget. And particularly actually for trade titles, there's I would say about 50% of trade do want paid editorial, as we call it. This is just very top line. Again, we're just finishing up on the media section, but this is an example of lifestyle media and what we call verticals. So lifestyle media, you can see Women's Weekly there, Stylist Magazine. Women's Weekly is a bit of an older skew, so you're looking at women maybe over 40s. Stylist Magazine is more younger women. I don't know, like 20s to 35. Then you've got Olive, a food magazine, UK Investor magazine, Lad Bible. So it's just trying to show you the breadth of media we have that we will pitch to depending on the client, etc. Obviously, if you live in the UK, which I think most people do here, you understand the 5 terrestrial channels we have. I've just put it on because obviously all of them also have spin-offs. So they have like ITV2 or ITV3. I don't even know if they do have an ITV3, but it's just aware that all of these channels have news desks and news stations. So often if a company is launching to market, it might be relevant for their news sections for the, just the news. Really important to flag Ofcom. In the UK, Ofcom are very, very strict with TV mentioning brands. So I know I mentioned before I used to work in Australia. It was so much easier to get brands on TV where a CEO could wear a branded T-shirt even, little bit like America. It's still challenging to get on TV over there, but the UK, I mean, twice we've had a situation where we got a client onto This Morning, And we mentioned, it was actually a case study, and we said, can you mention, the brand, because we know the presenters won't, and they're not allowed. And basically they weren't allowed to. So we find ways around it, and we usually negotiate if a producer wants to have a client or case study on TV, that we have that conversation up front, because it really is a missed opportunity for us and a brand, our client, if we put a lot of effort into getting somebody onto TV and then we get no plugs. However, TV is hugely powerful. And if we do get the right plug, because obviously we can't control everything as PR people, once a journalist takes it, or a TV producer, we can only control so much, then it can be very, very powerful for uptake, for people searching for your business, and just for awareness. Just finally, we do have Press Association, which is on to the left, and SWNS. They are just syndications. Their jobs are, if you pitch to them, they will write stories up, and they just send it out to all media, and media pick up stories from these associations, what we call newswires. So that's a little bit of what PR is, a little bit about the British media landscape. As I said, I could go on for an hour about both, but I'm going to now just talk to you a little bit about go-to-market. So the first thing to think about, and I'm talking now from a perspective, if you're approaching it where you were like, we want to go to media, we want journalists, we want to go to influencers, we are ready now to start getting people interested in our business. It is so important that you know that your business is watertight. So for example, have you done a soft launch and tested, all the beta testing? If it's an app, is it populated with enough people? Is your website, is the spelling and the grammar all correct? If there's an issue with customer service, do customer service get back quickly? Will it be prompted? We always do a bit of due diligence with clients about this. So I often say that it's good to speak to, for example, a PR agency a lot earlier, because you might think that you're ready and actually you're not. So what I would just say is, you do not want journalists to start looking at your website, reviewing your product, and get bad coverage. And it rarely happens, but we did have an instance once where we did as much as we could to make sure that it seems everything's fine. This client was really confident in its product. And actually, when it did get to a journalist, and it did get to a top journalist, there were certain things that didn't function and they got a bad review. Now, again, it's very rare this happens, but it's just so important that you go when it's ready. And a journalist is not going to be interested in featuring a brand if they can't show enough that they've, got a certain amount of members, for example. I'm just thinking, you might be thinking, how many members is that? I don't know, maybe minimum. I mean, the population's 65 million in the UK. So maybe that's something we can come back to, but it depends on the business, how many members you would need as well. So I'm not going to give you a figure right now, because some businesses you might have less, some you'd need a lot more. Briefing a PR agency. Actually, this is briefing any company or supplier. You want to be able to do a written briefing document with an overview of your company and the aims, your target audience, the demographics, maybe if you've got personas, who your competitors are, even if you don't think you've got competitors, who might be similar in the market, what are your goals as a business, what does success look like to you from, so if it was PR, what would you like to achieve from PR? And you might not fully understand this. And again, when you speak to a PR person, they can sort of discuss this with you before you write the brief. And if you don't have time, you don't have to write a brief. You might just verbally brief an agency. But also, what's the return on investment? So is there a way that you're going to be tracking PR internally? Again, we always make recommendations if a company doesn't know. But obviously, if you're going to engage with any supplier, you want to know how are you actually reviewing and evaluating success. Obviously, it's good to share budget of how much budget you have. And also, I would say minimum 6 to 4 months in advance to brief an agency. But if you are going to market, you could even do it in theory 12 months in advance. That is very early, but it might be that when you speak to a PR professional, they give you some advice where it will help you prepare sooner than going 3 months before and them saying you're not ready. Or also it might be that a part of the strategy, which I'm going to talk you through, that we did with one client, we actually had to do some pre-work before you go to media. When you're looking for an agency or any supplier, it doesn't just need to be PR, it might be social media, it might be advertising or whatever you're looking for. But essentially, we would recommend, obviously, the agency or supplier you're looking for, are they within the same sector? Have they got experience? What you can do is initially just send them an email, set up a call, and what they would do is obviously ask, and it's kind of an exploratory call, but what we usually do as PR people is we will send credentials. So we'll have that initial call, find out how we can just verbally offer any consultation. And then depending on the sector of your business, we will send you credentials, which will include the work that we've done before and case studies of clients that are relevant to your business. You would then potentially work with 1 to 3 to actually do a proposal. Some clients we work with just come to us because it's word of mouth. They've worked with us before, or they're happy with what they've seen, that they're happy for us to write a proposal. But you might want to work with maybe, I don't know, like 3 PR agencies and get them to put a proposal forward. One thing that you won't necessarily get this in a PR proposal, because this is work more when you're appointed. But when you go to market, obviously you want to get your messaging and marketing position right, because as mentioned before, you might be a company that literally is completely disruptive. There is nothing in the market like it. And that's great, because that really is unique and that's gold dust. But for many companies, they do have competitors, but they might be doing something different or better. But essentially, you do need to create a market position for yourself. So what we always say is to do the SWOT approach, which is you can do this yourself, work out your strengths in the market. What are your weaknesses? You know, it might be, I don't know, one piece of tech or to do with your delivery time. I don't know. What are the opportunities for you that you think stand out, and what are the threats? So a threat could be, actually, there's a company in a market that's already got 40% share of the market. So it's that sort of thing that's really good, because as part of working out your strength weaknesses, that starts to help us build what is your market position. So where can you cut through the noise compared to your competitors? As mentioned, we do a lot of that work with clients once they appoint us, but you could do that internally yourself. And I'm going to give you an example now of a brand or 2 brands that are the same but different market positions. Messaging, from a PR or marketing perspective, you ideally want to have 3 key messages minimum, but that you might have 5 or 6 that, with all material that you're going out with, that you are having, you know, what is your strap line? How do you help? What makes you unique? So usually for PR, we have 3 key messages, and that consistency helps to build brand awareness and brand sort of adoption, where, especially if you're new, people start to think, yeah, I know that brand. That's what they do. That's what they help with. So I'm just going to give you a very top line example of Apple versus Microsoft. They both do consumer, well, and business, but laptops and devices.
Just
so
super quick one, Lisa.
Oh, yeah.
Just sorry to jump in for 1 second. Your camera's turned off, and I thought you're absolutely nailing it. And I think everyone should see you while you're nailing it. So I don't know if that's something that you can.
Hysterical. Has it been off for long?
It's just been a couple of minutes. I was letting it go because obviously the content's brilliant.
Hold on. Start my video.
There we go.
Don't know what happened there. I'm flattered you're there to see me. Thank you.
There we go.
Am I sharing my screen still?
You are. At the moment, you've gone off. There we go. So yeah,
there
if you can get that back into slideshow. And
then, that
better? Hide my face. 1 second. Yeah, that all looks absolutely perfect. So I'll leave you to it. Sorry for interrupting.
No, thanks for flagging it. Just to let you know, the good news is that this workshop probably will only be maybe an hour, because I was trying to go through it quickly because I know it's over people's lunchtime. So I think we're doing good time. So as mentioned, Apple versus Microsoft. So this is an example of how they have done differentiated themselves. So the positioning of Apple is it's premium, it's design focused, it's lifestyle orientated. Their messaging is think different, focuses on creativity, simplicity, and a seamless ecosystem. And their audience, they're targeting creatives, design conscious, and premium consumers. Versus Microsoft, that their positioning is functional, productivity focused, and versatile. Their messaging is do more, highlights performance, capability, and work efficiency, and their audience is business professionals, students, general users who value utility over style. So again, this is just top line, but you can see as a team internally the work that you can do, or again, you know, as PR people that we can help with that, about how do you, and because when we do that different market position, that's not only what we do for press materials or marketing materials, but the journalists understand the difference as well, and so will your consumers or stakeholders, etc. So I'm just going to move on to strategy. So you wouldn't usually, you might in a PR proposal be given a little bit of market position, but really that's work you need to do when you kind of start. But the strategy, if you get a PR proposal, they will give you a little bit of that. We don't always want to give the game away and give out everything, because it's a lot of work, and especially if you're going to a variety of different agencies. But it's definitely something that you would expect from a PR team to be able to present. Now, I'm going to use a client case study that I launched to market, which some of you might have heard from, which is Smile Direct Club. Any of you that don't know it, they were a teeth aligner therapy business. They were American. They were so fast growth. I mean, I think they had something like 350 million funding. I need to double check that now, but I know it was like huge from what I remember. And that's one of the co-founders on the right. But essentially, they were very, very disruptive, because if you think that orthodontists will train, I don't know, like 8 to 10 years to become an orthodontist. And essentially to have Smile Direct Club, you didn't actually see a dentist or orthodontist. The process was you either went into a smile shop and you saw a dental nurse, and they did loads of 3D high-tech scans of your mouth where they would put a smile plan together, or you just get it sent to your house and they give you like a gum shield and they do called like a mold of your mouth, and then you send it off. So a lot of it's remote, but by doing that, it made it a lot more accessible to people that maybe would not have necessarily been able to afford to get your teeth aligned. If you think about it, Invisalign something like £5,000, whereas a Smile Direct Club was not half the price, but you're looking at about 2,800, 3,000. So it's a lot more accessible. And just to be clear, that it wasn't ever going to do, like if you really do have structural or, you know, a lot of teeth that really were maybe quite crooked, or teeth that need to be taken out, it was just very much for treatment. So not everybody passed to do Smile Direct Club, but it was to do with, you know, you've got a few teeth that needed to be moved. But essentially, because it was disruptive, we knew that a lot of the dental UK industry, this was going to ruffle a lot of feathers, because essentially you don't want orthodontists to be like, well, they're about to put me out of a job, or they're going to end up lowering my fees because there's so much competition in the market. So we had to sort of deal with a lot of that within our strategy. So this is very top line. But we essentially had, which I'm going to talk you through, the pre-launch that we needed to do some relationship builders and some education about Smile Direct Club. We were going to do a business launch first, and we did that by bringing a C-suite over, some key senior executives from America to meet with journalists. We did an influence and consumer press launch, and then it was about scale and momentum. So, for example, to begin with Smile Direct Club, the B2B side of things, there were quite a few media angles, but the general media angle we went with was Smile Direct Club launches to get Britain smiling again. Because it's an American brand, we kind of went with that whole, you know, Americans are known for having really good teeth. I think part of that is because a lot of them have private medical insurance. So a lot of the time their orthodontics is a part of that. Don't quote me on that, but I do actually think that was part of the reason so many Americans have such good teeth. But because it was an American company, we sort of tapped into that and to get Britain Smile again. And we used some data. So for example, we said that X many Brits didn't like their smile. I actually haven't put the data in here, so sorry. But essentially it was X many Brits don't like their smile. X many Brits hide their teeth. X many Brits are more likely to visit the dentist after getting their teeth aligned. So what we're trying to show is that when people are proud of their teeth, proud of their smile, they're more likely to smile more, which is the Get Britain Smiling again. It's a lot to do with confidence we wanted to tap into, but also from a B2B perspective, we were showing that actually it would bring more business to dentists, because if essentially people look after their teeth more once they've had them done. So what we did was we actually organized meet and greets with a lot of the dental associations through meetings and etc., because obviously they would be thinking, what is this brand that's come in and they're remote and they're not going to see dentists? So we got them face to face to talk about their business model, how it was going to work, and to answer any questions they were concerned about. It's also worth flagging that if a business is really disruptive or new, completely new to market, or just new anyway, a lot of journalists will go to associations. So let's just say you're a health brand and you bought something and they're writing a story about you. They will go to a health association and go, what are your thoughts on this business? So a part of our tactic was, well, at least if we've spoken to the dental associations, we would hope that we have a more favorable statement from them than if we didn't go to them at all. Because we're basically saying, we're in the market, we're open, we want to meet with you, and it's that relationship building. So that's a part of tactics that are considerations for go-to-market. Who do you need to speak to before to kind of, I suppose, become friendlies with? As mentioned, we then did a media tour. So we took 3 of their senior executives to journalists, the FT, we went to the Times, I think the Economist, or maybe it was the Economist, but all the big newspapers. And a part of that was they had recently had a huge funding round. So we tapped into the fact they were going to use part of that funding to invest into the UK market. They're creating jobs. And also they're trying to make teeth alignment more accessible for different budgets. But by going to business media first, that's quite important, because they're quite heavy. What's the word? I don't even know. It just, politically, it's better to go to business before you go to consumer, because there's lots of things you can do with consumer media, whereas business kind of want to go first. Then for the consumer launch, we did a launch event with 10 to 15 top journalists. We did the journalists event. We actually did it at Cersei's in Liverpool Street. And then we did a separate event for 15 influencers. So we made sure it was a really nice venue, great food, great views. So it's great for content. And I've just realized there's a typo there. Apologies. Met with STC's team that gave them an overview about the business. And then actually what we did was we took them by taxis, or we took them in a van to actually start getting teeth aligner therapy. So they then, after the event, had their first Smile Direct Club session, which basically we made sure that anybody that attended that event was essentially going to write about the brand. And for influencers, they also started taking content. Just to let you know, for the influencer program we ran at the time, I think it was one of the biggest in the UK. It was really big budgets. Just worth saying as well that we did all of this under embargo. So when you're speaking with media, you will choose a launch date, and that all of them can, get all the assets they need, do interviews, and they all launch on the same day, because media is based on news. So if you go to a journalist, and another journalist wrote about it last week, and it's a national, if it's a top tier, big national, they don't want to write something a week later. So we know tactically, if we get journalists to under embargo, we're giving them information, and we say it's going to officially launch on, I don't know, Wednesday the 16th, then they know they can all write their stories on the day or afterwards. To keep momentum, so after the launch, obviously we got lots of lovely media coverage. You have tactics to keep momentum with media. So for example, we kept a review program going. So we had what we called whitelisting. So we'd always be getting influencers and press to go into treatment. We actually started something called Smile Ambassadors. So we worked with a panel of experts from different sectors. So we had a psychologist, career coach, a beauty therapist, a fitness, and some of these were quite famous, but we used them to place interviews and advice articles around, happiness and confidence. So for example, 7 tips to build confidence for a job interview. Well, we could work with a well-known career coach or psychologist to talk about that. And then they could include the importance of a smile and potentially, ways that you can, realign your teeth, for example. Tapping into seasonality. So obviously with teeth, you've got wedding season, which is a lot of brides or even grooms will be doing wedding prep. So that's a vertical we could pitch to a National Smile Day. Case studies, we did lots of before and afterwards, and people that had interesting backstories. Just because somebody's had their teeth done doesn't mean it's going to get coverage. But if they had a story, like maybe, they were out of work for a long time, suddenly they had their teeth done, boosted their confidence, they got the job of their dreams, that sort of type of backstory. And obviously the brand would always do new product launches. Just quickly, because I'm going to move on to how you can do your own PR soon, but they also rolled out smile shops regionally. So obviously that gave us an opportunity to do media moments, because we would do regional rollouts with media. So again, we're always looking out for opportunities for when can we go to media and create more coverage or awareness. They also did a smile bus to do a regional tour where they would go to remote areas. So it's quite a good tactic that the smile shops were in, main cities, whereas the smile bus was a great way to capture an audience that maybe wouldn't have had a shop nearby. So how to do your own PR. This is something look, I've been doing PR for 18 years. It takes a long time to know. So doing a few slides is not going to cut it, but hopefully through the slides that we talked through and what I'm about to talk through, it just give you a bit of a flavor of how things work. So the first thing you would do is, if you wanted to go to a journalist yourself, is think, well, who is my audience? Okay. So by knowing who your audience is, then you would think, well, who's the journalist that would be right? So for example, I've got there science writers. If your brand is not brand or company is something very scientific, where it's been through tests and laboratories, well, a science writer would be the best person to potentially go to about that, or a tech journalist. It might be that if you're doing something, a new app for interiors and homes, that you might want to go to a homes and interiors. So that's the way you've got to be thinking. These are not all the job titles that media have, but actually this is probably a fraction, but it just gives you an idea of when we're pitching, we're like, who's the right type of journalist? And then what you want to do is you would want to research their editorial style. So by reading that journalist, so if you find an outlet and you think, okay, I actually think this might be one for the broadsheet newspapers, and I think there's a scientific angle there. So who's the journalist at the time, or the FT? Look them up. What sort of things do they cover? Do you notice that they like data? Do they like founder stories that have got an interesting backstory that you think, oh, actually, I'm a founder and I had this really interesting way that I came up with the idea for my business? That would make potentially a good headline. So just research the journalists and get a feel for the sorts of articles that they write. It's really important that when you're writing a pitch or a press release, we always use the who, what, why, when, where. So we're making sure that, especially in the first paragraph, it's not so much for a pitch, but ideally in a press release, you want to know, who you are, what you do, why you're doing it, when it's launching, or there might be an event, and where either, if there's a call to action, is it a link back that they have to visit a website, or do they go to an event, or do they go to a store to buy something? So it's just important to keep that in mind. It's really text heavy. I've given an example of the sort of intro email here, just to give you an idea. I, in the past, have taken sometimes 3 hours to write a pitch, an email pitch. because you've only got one chance with journalists. So this is very, very top line and very generic, but I just want to give you a flavor. So the subject heading is so important. Journalists, to give you an idea, I think sometimes they can get thousands of emails a day, thousands. So your subject heading is the most important. So if you have, you know, launch of UK first, whatever it is, we know that sort of thing, you know, just something that's clickbait, as we call it. So it might be you say, dear journalist or hi journalist, I loved your recent article on blah, blah, blah. So obviously they like the fact that you're looking and thought your readers might be interested in an exclusive. So you're saying to them, I'm giving this to you first. I'm not giving this to anybody else. You can have that story as an exclusive on our latest launch. In May, we're unveiling, you know, for example, a new product. You talk about what the USP is and how it's solving a problem. And maybe you mention the key features and also how it's going to help the target audience achieve whatever. Now, to be honest with you, if I was writing a pitch, it sounds a bit weird. It probably wouldn't be this, but because every brand is so different, it's hard to give you an example, but this sort of gives you a sense of it. Also, you want to say that this is under embargo until, for example, the date, and we put 00.01 a.m. That's more for print newspapers. We do that, which I know is kind of a dying breed, but it's because we know that if they go to print, that it has to be the next day print run. But that just gives you an idea. Anyway, it's always good to add stats as well. I'm not going to stay on the slide any longer because, again, it's such a crafted thing to do. Like I said, I've spent hours just doing one email before, but it just gives you an idea of the sorts of things you need to do. You don't want a very long email. If there's a pitch where you do have a lot of information, say that you've got all the information under the signature. So just do a highlight overview. You can even bullet point things. You could do an intro email with your who, what, why, when, bullet points, they can read it at a glance. Please find full details below. Would you be interested? So something that's short to read, they can read at a glance quickly, clickbait email, you're giving it to them in as an exclusive, and you definitely are trying to tap into the current media agenda or got some recent stats. They don't even have to be your own statistics. You can just find, so for example, if you're tapping into the beauty industry, well, how much is the beauty industry worth? You can Google and find that. So it might be you say, we are here to disrupt the 500 billion, I know it's not that much, beauty sector. So really big headliney kind of examples. So we're getting sort of towards the end now, but just some highlighting things about approaching media. Any launch or news should be given to media first before posting anywhere. This is so important. Do not post things on social media. Do not put up billboards if you haven't gone to journalists first. It is etiquette that journalists must be given a story first, even before TV advertising. So if you're launching a campaign, TV goes on the same day as TV advertising, but it must not go afterwards. Journalists won't be interested. As mentioned, we give exclusives. So you'll say to journalists, would you like to run this first? If you don't get any takers, you can just pitch it far and wide, but we just, especially with the top tier, the nationals. And another thing to keep in mind with, unless a story is literally huge, where lots of national newspapers would write it, like if your company was really different, then yeah, you'd get a few companies, like the Smile Direct Club, that was really different. A lot of newspapers were interested in it, but often you might just get one national newspaper for launch and they will have that as an exclusive, and then we go far and wide to all other media afterwards. Follow up 2 to 3 days afterwards on that exclusive. What I would also say is that when you're writing a pitch to a journalist, other than the embargo, if you're doing an exclusive, pitch to them at least 2 weeks in advance, maybe sometimes even 3 to 4 weeks at a launch, and say, we're launching, would you be interested? Because journalists don't always see it. They might be busy. They might be away on holiday. They might say to you, yeah, I do want to run it, but can I run it on this date? And if that is the case and it's a good journalist and it's not too far out, we will move the launch date to suit a journalist. But I would recommend that you, within the email, say, if you're able to get back to me by in the next, to give them a date to get back to you, then you know that if you do go to another journalist, it won't annoy them if they came back to you because you've already given them that deadline, but do follow them up. If you don't hear back from them, go out to another, let's say 5 journalists. And if you don't hear back, we usually will amend the pitch, maybe play around with the headline, play around with the angle. But just to let you know, sometimes this isn't so much for a launch, but normally just pitching, so just media relations, sometimes we have to go to 50 to 100 journalists to get a piece of coverage. Now, that's kind of changed because obviously if you're a PR person, you should tactically have a strong enough story that you don't have to go out to that many people. But we're finding since COVID, things are taking a lot longer. There's more journalists that are taking on more people's roles. So it's just taking a lot longer. So it is not unusual to not hear back from journalists. And that is why PR people are always trying to manage expectations with clients and lead times. And just finally, when you do a pitch, it does have to be targeted at different media. So for example, if you're launching something to market, the pitch that you write to, I don't know, a features writer or news desk is not going to be the same as a TV producer, because a TV producer wants to know, well, what visuals am I going to have? A radio producer is going to know, well, what can I have a phone in? You know, what things can we make the listeners interested to? So again, as PR people, but it's worth just flagging that you're thinking, who's a journalist and what different ways do people consume with that journalist, if that makes sense. You have to adapt your pitch. This I'm not really going to go through, but we know that the things that get headlines are UK first and world first. Anything you can say is a first or unique, media-like. News stats and statistics. I've got an example here. Brits are pouring millions into pasta night. X% eat pasta 3 times a week. That's not for a launch, but it just gives you an idea. And media love anything to do with spend. So I've got here spending over X many million a year on sources alone. So they like these big numbers and statistics. But with surveys, don't spend money unless you've got a professional helping you, because it really does need to be something unique. Again, I've said this, they like case studies. It might be an award you're rolling out or a competition. There's a strong call to action, or so anything that's to do with corporate responsibility. And again, funding, expansion, milestone, UK investment, that's the sort of thing we know captures the headlines. I've gone over a lot of this. So this is just the last bit now. Looking at media lead times, if you're pitching, magazines obviously still do run, and you're looking at about 4 to 5 months in advance. So we in PR do things like Christmas in July. So already the main print magazines, we do, if we're doing something from a consumer perspective, you're doing it that much in advance. You do it in July because they've got such long lead times. Weekly magazines, you're looking about 6 weeks lead time to pitch. Trade magazines, about 6 to 12 weeks. Newspapers, if it's features, so news desks, obviously you can pitch the day before or on the morning of, but if it's features, about 2 to 3 weeks. And also, if you're going to news desks, so, you know, anything that's just dropping, you would go, you'd start at about 7:30, 8 a.m. in the morning, and you need to sell in and speak to them before 11 a.m. because then they go into conference and they decide what's being featured. And if you're trying to get in print for news, that would be for you'd pitch the morning to go in the next day's newspaper. And again, just daytime TV, if you're getting onto TV channels, if it's more lifestyle shows, I would pitch about 3 weeks in advance to guarantee, well, if you hopefully guarantee a slot. I'm aware that I've been talking for ages. I am at the end now. Just to let you know how this is the final slide, or final 2. The way that we manage quality, if you're managing a PR agency, is you agree deliverables, you discuss what quality coverage looks like, because, you know, just having a mention isn't necessarily quality coverage, you know, because is it going to work hard enough for you, that piece of coverage? Also, we agree usually what sort of media you see as tier 1 and tier 2. So you agree that all up front. How we're measuring success, and obviously set out a scope of work. And this is just an example how we measure quality. So if we work with a client, they may say, you know, tier 1 media is really important. I want an image included. I want a spokesperson, or 2 key messages, and we usually put a score quality for it. So basically, as a team, when we're generating coverage, we know what's important to you that's going to cut through. And then at the end, when we do a review or we have touch points, we can show each piece of coverage, we do a quality score. So that is it. I know I've been speaking for ages. I think I need a glass of water. I hope that was helpful. And David, back over to you.
Oh my God, that was fantastic. Thank you so
I'm
much,
all out.
Lisa.
I hope people are still on the line.
You've nailed it. You've nailed it. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was absolutely brilliant. I love a little clapping emoji, heart emoji. Yeah, please do say hello. Thank you in the chat. It's always nice, I think, as a speaker, sometimes you're speaking to the void a little bit, and it's nice to know people are out there following along and taking some from it. So it's nice to see all these emojis coming through. As well as sticking around for questions, Lisa has very kindly put her email address on that slide there. I would definitely recommend grabbing it. She has said that she'd be very happy to maybe grab half an hour with any of you that have perhaps questions, a little follow-up discovery call, whatever. And again, very grateful for you offering that up, Lisa. So we'll leave that there for a second. And then we'll maybe get us back to a bigger screen in a moment. I've got a few questions, if that's all right, Ace. I'll maybe start firing through. We've had one come in on the Q&A from Madalena as well, so we'll get to that, Madalena. And the invite is there. If questions pop up as I'm talking, please do jump in and ask your questions. What I might do, Lisa, if it's okay, I might get you to stop sharing your screen,
Yeah,
now,
no worries.
and then that'll get us back on the big screen, as it were. Amazing.
Do you know what's so funny? Start my video later. Right, here we go. Stop. Have I stopped sharing?
You've done it. You've done it. Don't you panic. I don't know what's happened today. I've literally hosted hundreds of these blooming webinars. Sharing screens has never.
I know. I always have something inevitably, and it's always at the worst times, isn't it? Things go wrong.
I'll tell you what. One thing that's opened my eyes though, and I did have a little bit of awareness of this. My daughter works in PR, and she's been educating me over the last couple of years, because I must admit I thought it was very easy, or I didn't really understand it. And I think that a big takeaway for me here actually is to do it and do it well. You need a lot of structure, a lot of ideation. You have to be creative. You have to be timely. Like, it's a proper piece of work, isn't it? So yeah, that's really come across.
Never underestimate how hard PR people work. It's quite a stressful industry. It's a lot of work. We work long hours.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, I'll take my hat off to all of you. But I guess in terms of just a couple of questions, first of all, like I love the stunts. I love, timing it, getting a bit of a hook to get yourself into the news cycle. Have we lost you, Lisa? You still with us? Or did I?
Do you know what? It froze, but I had the stunt bit and then it froze.
Perfect. I was just saying, I love that idea of, you're jumping on a hook, you're jumping on a stunt, whatever it is. And I just wondered with that, you've gave some great examples, but when you're approaching that, do you kind of sit down as a team with people in your network? How do you manage that creative
How do you come up with it?
Yeah.
So usually as a PR person, it could be that you're just on your own and you see it and you're like, right, straight away we've seen something, it's relevant to the client. What can we come up with that we can, what we call is kind of like ride off the back of? Often if you've got, the team as well, you might, if you can't think, sometimes you could just think of something up yourself. You say, right, let's do this. Or you would actually sit with the team and workshop and flesh it out, because even if you have an idea, somebody might be able to actually amplify that idea. So obviously the more creative minds you have, the better. Then what we would do is speak to the client about it and say, we've had this idea, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes we don't include the client, we just do it, depending on the level. I mean, like a news shack like Virgin, obviously you're absolutely getting client approval, but sometimes clients might see something and say, oh, I've just seen this. I mean, ideally we want to be the first on the front foot, but we like to work collaboratively.
Amazing. And I think it obviously depends on the brand as well, doesn't it? Sometimes you could be like Virgin, the example you used, they were renowned for being a little bit cheeky and a little bit pushing the edge. And I love it. I love it. The other thing, so you've come up with your idea, your concept, that there's definitely some strategy behind it as well. And you're really good at setting the scene in terms of the outlets, and perhaps how certain stories you go to certain organizations, and even within the organization you go to certain journalists. That all makes lots of sense. But it feels like the journalists do have potential to be a little bit of the gatekeepers in terms of you getting out there. So can you do it from cold, or do you proactively build relationships with the journalists? Do you use the same journalists over time? You've been doing it for a long time. Does the relationship building matter in PR?
Yeah, just to let you know, I didn't mention this, but journalists are really difficult to deal with. I'm sure you all would understand that. And just for the record, I know this is being recorded, but news desks are the hardest. You literally, you call a journal, we do still call, you've got about 5 seconds, they'll put the phone down on you. They are, because you can imagine what they're dealing with, the breaking news, and you've got a product you want to mention, so to speak. But what I would say is, obviously, it's good to have relationships, and as PR people, we do have relationships, but I have moved to different markets and gone cold. I said to you, I worked in Australia, I didn't have any contacts. What I would say is, if your angle is strong enough, a journalist will see it.
Got you.
Yeah, so if you've got a good product and you get in the headlines, and just, always do follow up. What I would say to you as well is, most journalists are good at reading their emails. And we know that if we go out with a strong pitch, a journalist usually will respond quite quickly. So we know that if a journalist responds within a few hours or 48 hours, if you haven't heard from them, definitely follow them up. Sometimes they have missed it their way because they do get so many, but really journalists are like razor sharp at like work like that. So that will also, it's an indicator of how strong the pitch is.
Makes a lot of sense. And I guess in terms of that you're not sensitive about it. It's just not landed. They've deleted your email, but it doesn't stop you going back with a different pitch or tweaking your pitch, in the coming weeks and months.
Doing this. And as PR people, you have to be quite hard skinned, because we're in a people pleasing industry. We get a lot of no's, a lot of rejections, but you have to pivot, try harder. It's all about the hustle.
Makes sense. And in terms of that piece, it does sound like you have to be very organized as well. You've built your pitch, you've sent it out, you need to track where you've sent your pitch, you need to follow up. If they don't get back, you pick another 5, you contact them. How do you do that? Can people do it with a spreadsheet themselves, or do you use particular tools to manage it all?
So we do. And one thing I didn't actually mention, sorry, was how to get in contact and find their emails. So we have databases that we have, journalist databases, and they're quite expensive, as you can imagine. And we can get contacts from and internationally contacts.
Yep.
What I would say is, sorry, I'm not directly answering your question, but I'll go back to it, is what you can do is, if you don't have media databases, you can do it manually. You could, if you find somebody at, give me an example of a journalist at the Daily Mail, what's their email? You find out the alias and you just copy that with their name, so you can do that to find journalists' emails. And I've actually even done that to myself in the past, because sometimes even databases don't have their correct email. But going back to organization, we usually, if we have a media list, you might organize it into news desks, tech journalists, and then within that, you might have online, print. So that's how we organize it all. And then you leave notes, followed up, sent out, and then we'll date everything. So we'll go, just sent out a first pitch on this date in October. And then we know, well, then when do we follow it up? And so on. So that's how you organize. And from a reporting perspective, any PR person that's working with a client has everything reported. So coverage, activity for the week, work in progress. So there's always an organizational aspect.
Amazing. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And you've got to have some organization in PR.
It's massive. Yeah, and just to let you know, when someone does a PR proposal for you, what then happens is you then kind of do like a timeline if it's agreed, and you'll go, this is a timeline, these are the weeks, what we're doing here. And then when you're actually in momentum stage, because obviously most clients will just always have PR switched on, you will, every 6 months, sometimes a year, you do a plan for them, and you say, this is what we're going to do every month. And often you don't always stick to it, because things will pop up. A client might go, actually, we've got news this month, or there's something in media. But it shows the client that you have a structure to how you're going to be going to media every month, and it helps with the team.
Makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. I'm going to jump into the couple of questions that in the Q&A, and then I have a couple more, I think, just to sort of finish us off after that. But both questions actually in the Q&A are linked actually to costs. And I think it's probably timely to take at this point, because I think, as I say, the first thing I've realized is that there's actually a lot of work to this. And I guess one thing you might butt up against is companies going, what, how much? You know, they perhaps don't understand what is involved. So the question at the top there from Madalena, and thank you for the question, Madalena, is what key factors should companies consider when setting a PR budget? And what are some common mistakes companies make when budgeting for PR? So, you know, how would you recommend
I
companies?
can give you a price structure. Okay, so where to start? I'm going to go in with the real thing that might scare a few people first with the budgets, and then I'm going to go to soften it a bit. So most PR agencies that are established and experienced, you'll be looking at most retainers, like a monthly fee. So you can do projects, which are like a launch project, which would really be minimum 4 months. You maybe do 3 months, but ideally 6, because you've got to think about the pre-pitching and all that. Most PR agency will be charging 5,000 to 6,000 a month basic. That's their entry. Mm-hmm. Once you're going to get a company that's like Series A to Series B, you know that, and then as you've got one that might be close to exit, they might be paying 8 to 10 to 12,000 a month, and then you've got your massive brands that are your Samsung, your Apples, well, their retainers could be 20, 30,000 a month. Okay, now bringing it back, because I know that a lot of people on this call might be thinking, oh my god, we don't have that budget or whatever. What we do at Banjo is that we offer a lot of flexible pricing. So what we do is we will, you can work with one consultant, not just a team. So we can offer it like a freelancer where we go, okay, or we can just do a one-off press release. So for example, a one-off press release, and it depends on the client, the type of announcement we offered recently for a trade announcement was 1,500. That was a trade announcement. I think we did a trade and consumer announcement, it was looking at 2,000 above. But it could be that you want someone on retainer. But what I would say is that we deal with 2 types. You have the businesses that are established and they, you know, have got that budget. But we do have a side of the business that works with more the sort of seed stage, pre-seed, that have more nimble budgets that we can work to. So what I would say is, if you're not sure, DM me at lisa@thisisbanjo.com, and I can kind of either jump on a call with you or I can send you some maybe costs, because for me, I like to make PR accessible because I see the value in it. So that's the answer to that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I do feel like I asked you, you know, how long was a piece of string, eh? Because it really does depend. You know, if you want that Smile Direct Club work that you're doing, oh my God, you know, there was so much to it. And, you know, you must have had a team of people working on that for a long time.
They had bigger budgets than the 5,000, as you can imagine. But like I said, you know, what I do with companies that are smaller that don't have it, I'll just say, we're going to give you one consultant. And often it's me. I will work directly for that, because what I say is we either just have one that I work directly, you just pay a fee and I make it work and work smart, or for those that have the budget, you know, we'll bring the team in.
Yeah, makes lots of sense. I love it. Thank you very much. And Maina, similar question actually to Madalena's. So I think we've actually covered that one, talking about costs and stuff like that. So that makes lots of sense. As I say, I've maybe got 2 more questions, and then we'll draw things to a close from there. I guess just in terms of doing it yourself, and I'm not sure I'd be brave enough to try, but if we were going to share any tips in terms of that, you talked about metrics that you track as an agency, about the quality of coverage, and, you know, you build that into a statement of work, all that type of stuff. But I wondered if, as an individual, should, rather than tracking the outcomes of where it goes, is there metrics they should be tracking in terms of
internally?
Internally, like how much outbound should I have done? You know, should I aim to do 2 campaigns a quarter? Should I aim to contact 100 journalists a quarter? Or, you know, is there like metrics that people could track to try and keep themselves consistent?
What I would say is, and it's one of my favorite sayings, that PR is a marathon, not a sprint. you really do want to just always have it switched on. You can, and some brands will just do projects, and that's how they sort of do it when it's, you know, across the year. But what I would say is that I would say it would be good to minimum get 2 pieces of coverage a month, minimum. And the way that you can track that, it also, I don't know if this is the question you're asking actually, but one thing you can do is you can give PR agencies like certain links that you can track it internally if it's used. We can't guarantee the journalist will use that link. But also what I would say is that PR is not necessarily the best tool for slightly contradict myself, selling products or customer acquisition. We have sometimes that you could get a piece of media coverage and it is brilliant and it's in a national, but you haven't necessarily acquired any customers. That's not what PR is really about. It's about credibility. It's about longevity. It's about if someone's Googling that you're coming up. And over time, it's about journalists going, oh, hold on a minute. We're writing an article. That brand's got to be included because they know about it. I've not actually answered your question there, have I, David?
I liked it. I liked, so the way I've just linked it back is, it sounds super silly, but I'm like, I must post more on LinkedIn. And then I never do it.
And we do actually stuff like LinkedIn as well. We do newsletters, LinkedIn, because part of that is still thing, but actually, consistency is everything. Most clients, so when we have budgets like 5,000 to 6,000 a month, you'll be looking at about 5 to 6 pieces of coverage a month. But really, if you've got a 6-month project, you'll get a lot more than that. Because, you know, it's always on. So, but also this is why we always, before everything we agree, we put into a contract. So we work until we get that. We'll say we'll get you a certain amount of tier 1. We'll do a certain percentage with link backs to like all those sorts of things.
Yeah,
because that's all very important.
I love that. You're backing yourself there, Lisa. It's nice to see. Nice to see. So I think my final question, just to draw things to a close, I do always like to talk a little bit about the future as well. And I'm guessing over the 18 years you've been working in PR, things that have been changing. There's new technologies, new approaches, and obviously the world of AI is just insane at the moment. So I just wondered, you know, just to get your takes in, we have you, you know, how is the PR industry changing? What do you think it looks like, you know, over the next few years working in PR?
Well, I think, you know, obviously ChatGPT has been fantastic, and obviously do all use it for, you know, if you're writing stuff. Just to let you know, when we do press releases, we still will use a bit of ChatGPT, but we still need to do quite a lot of work on it, you know, so, but it's still a great medium to use. I think the future ultimately is that I think that as PR teams, we can be a bit more nimble because a lot of administration can be done using AI and apps. We might not need as bigger teams, which is obviously better for those paying for PR. Also, I think that where before our jobs were kind of a little bit more with journalists, it's a lot broader now. Like we are doing, you know, a lot more influencers, podcasts, working with CEO profiles. So a kind of thing that's shifting. We always did CEO profiling and thought leadership, but it's becoming even more important to take senior people within the team and kind of make them influential even more. By building their socials and LinkedIn's and so on. But I think just the way that we're consuming has changed. And I think, oh, well, this is a key thing. We go to a lot more social first journalists. So, you know, that maybe within media houses, the biggest team that is growing is the social media team. So they'll write articles, but it will be the TikTok team at the Daily Mail, the, you know, Instagram. So it's about a lot of our work is also moving into, well, how do we work and create content and visuals to get, so when they're selling in stories, it's people consuming like that. But obviously, a lot of companies that we're working with that are wanting PR are ones that are robotic, AI. So that's how it's shifting. Not the best answer. I would have probably had to think a little bit more,
No,
but that
it was
is a bit of the
perfect.
flavour.
It was perfect. It was perfect. Thank you very much, Lisa. I think drawing things to a close, look at us. We're nearly bang on time as well. Pair of pros, pair of pros. I think in terms of that, what you've delivered today has been absolutely awesome.
Oh, thanks, David.
Fantastic resource. And, you know, all of this is going on to YouTube. It's going on to Spotify. People will be able to follow along. And it's exactly what we're after. As a community, Founders 500, it's for founders and future founders. And we're really looking to bring people together and build this resource of support to help people grow and build their business. And you've definitely opened my eyes to a number of new techniques, which I'll definitely be implementing myself, Lisa. So yeah, thank you very much. And I guess just to end, you know, how did you find that? Did you enjoy yourself today? Did you enjoy the session?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Did
yeah,
you
no, good.
enjoy
Yeah,
it?
no, I loved it. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for having me. And thank you for those that joined. I hope it was helpful. You never know, do you, when you're going through slides, if actually anybody's understanding any of it, but hopefully it was helpful. And obviously I'd love to do another one in the future, maybe about how to raise funding with PR.
In
I don't know.
person. We're going to have to get you in person,
Yeah.
Lisa. I think we get you in front of people. I think
Get
it'd
a
be
new outfit.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Exactly. Love it. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you for joining us. We've got a couple of events coming up, October the 21st and November the 4th. They're both in person. So if you're in the London area, do check them out. But if not, thank you all for being here today. Thank you again, Lisa. And we'll see you all very soon. So goodbye.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.